So here you see box is the parent class, and we have a child class box weight which extends the box class. Okay, so first we will just have a look at the box class. As you can see, there are three instance variables with height, depth. Okay, all have been taken as private. Then we have different types of constructors here. Okay, first is, this is a constructor where we will be passing an object. Okay, we will be passing an object to this constructor. As you can see, box, this is the class name, and ob, this is the object. So this is one constructor where we will be passing an object, okay, to initialize the another object. So this, here we will be creating a clone of the object. We have already done such examples in one of our previous classes, if you remember, how we can assign the values of one object, okay, to another object. That means how we can create a clone, okay, of one existing object by passing that object, okay, by passing that object values to another object. So likewise we can create clones. We have seen such an example, if you all remember. So that is what we will be doing. This is a constructor where we are passing an object. Okay, in method passing we learned it. In method passing, object passing in methods, there we learned it. Okay, how we can pass objects in in methods and in constructors, there we learned it. So you can just go through that part if you forgot. So here we will be passing an object, and through that object parameters, okay, through that object values, we will be initializing the second object. Okay, so this is one constructor which will be doing that. Second, we have a parameterized constructor where we have all the parameters, so we have to pass some values to these parameters, and accordingly, the object will be assigned, these variables will be assigned. Okay, so this is a parameterized constructor where we have specified all dimensions. Next is a default constructor. So here we have given all minus ones, which means that it is not initialized. Okay, the objects are not yet initialized, so we have given minus one. So this is a default constructor that we have defined here with minus one. Then we have another parameterized constructor, but here we have given only one parameter, len. Okay, we have given only one parameter, len, and we will be initializing that value. We will be assigning that length value to each of the three variables, instance variables. Okay, so whatever value you will be passing for this length parameter, that value will be assigned to each of these three instance variables. So using this, we will be creating a cube. Okay, so what a cube is. In a cube, all dimensions are same. Dimensions means length, width and height, all are same. Yes, so what is the formula for to calculate the volume of a cube? It is L cube, means L into L into L. That means all the dimensions are same. That is why we will be passing only one value, and that value will be assigned to each, which means that width, height and depth all will be same for that cube. Okay, so that is what we will be doing here. And next, uh, what do we have? Okay, next is we have a method. Okay, so we have taken how many constructors here? 4 constructors. So we have 4 constructors for this parent class. Followed by that, we have a method volume, okay, which will simply calculate the volume of the box depending on whatever values you have passed as parameter, and we will be getting back the result. Okay, so here this is a simple method of data type of return type double, okay, to calculate the volume of the box. So that is what we have for the first parent class. Now talking about the child class, what do we have here? You see, as we are talking about invoking the superclass constructors from the child class, okay, so that is what we will be doing here. We will be making the most use of it. So see, the same thing for box weight also. Now box weight is the subclass, it extends the box class. Okay, okay, just before going to the box class, before going to box weight, is the box class clear? Ekintu buji paisa what we are doing here, what we have taken, one of the methods and the constructors we have taken. Ekintu buji paisa sage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next, in the box weight class, you see we have defined a instance variable weight. Okay, then what we are doing is, see, box weight. So this is another constructor, okay, where we will be passing an object. Fine. Here also we will be passing an object. Okay. Then we have, what we are doing is we are now calling the superclass constructor to initialize the values. Okay. So this is the, here you are calling the superclass constructor, and then we are passing an object OB. Okay. And this OB object is of the box weight. Okay, this I will explain a bit later, but however, for the time being, just understand that this statement is nothing but it is to invoke the superclass constructor. Which constructor will it invoke? The first constructor here, this one, where we are passing an object. Okay, and if you can see in this constructor, what are we doing? We are passing an object OB, and this object is of the box weight class. Okay, this object is of the box weight class, but however, we can pass a child class object to the parent class constructor. Okay, that is possible because why? Because this is an inherited class. Okay, because this is an inherited class, so we can pass a child class object to the parent class constructor. That is possible. Okay, that we can do, although this is a box, this constructor is of the parent class, but then what are we doing? This ob is of the child class. Okay, this ob that we are passing here through this statement, through this super class, through this function. Okay, we are trying to invoke that particular constructor by passing the ob object of the child class. Okay, so by passing this object, we will be invoking the parent class constructor, and through that we will be trying to initialize the child class object. Okay, and then we have one more initialization, okay, for weight. Next, what do we have? We again have a parameterized constructor. See, we have mentioned all the parameters here. Okay, and then since we already have a defined parameters constructor in the parent class, where we have initialized the values for width, height and depth here. Okay, in this one we have already initialized these values, width, height and depth, through these values. Yes, so this we will be making use in the child class. So what we will do is, from the child class parameters constructor, we will be invoking this constructor. When this constructor will be invoked, W, H and D, okay, whatever values were there, this will be assigned automatically to width, height and depth. Just that we will be left with only one value, which is the weight. Okay, which is the weight. So here in this child class, we have taken an additional dimension, which is weight. Apart from that, width, height and depth remains the same. That is why we can directly reuse those. We can directly reuse those constructors in our child class. That is what we are doing here, even in here and even in here. Additionally, we have just another dimension for the child class. Okay, it is an additional feature that we have to initialize on our own. Okay, because the parent class constructor can be used to initialize its own members only. Okay, it cannot initialize the child class members or instance variables. So that is why the extra instance variables that we have for the child class, that needs to be initialized explicitly. Other than that, the rest can be done by invoking the super keyword. Okay, by invoking the constructor. Now, so for this we have, as I said, here we will be invoking the superclass parameterized constructor, okay, to reuse the values for width, height, depth. So through that parent class object, we will be initializing this child class object, and in addition, we are assigning a weight also to the child class object. Then we have a default constructor. So this again, we do the same thing. Even in there, we have assigned the values for width, height and depth as -1. So that is why we are simply invoking that constructor here through this statement, and here we are simply assigning -1 to weight, because it is an additional feature. Next, again the same thing is done here. Okay, this is also a parameterized constructor, where this here we will be using this for a cube. As I said, this will be used for the cube. So as we know that in cube all dimensions are same, so length, breadth, height all are same, and even in there we have passed a value for length, and that length will be assigned to width, height and depth. Okay, making all the dimensions equal here. So this is what we are using. We are using the same constructor here. We are invoking it here, and in addition we are simply assigning a weight to that cube. Okay, a value that will be passed to m, okay, to initialize the weight. So that is what we have done in the child class. Is it clear? Child class is clear, this part? Connection to Buji Paisa? It's nothing
Yes,
tough,
ma'am.
difficult. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So here, if you can see, we are in the previous examples, we were simply invoking the constructors, parent class constructors to, you know, we were simply invoking the parent class constructors from the child class. That was it. But here we are invoking it at the same time. The main reason is to initialize the child class objects. That is the purpose. Okay, so whatever instance variables already exist in the parent class, because we are talking about inheritance, that can be reused now. Yes, so that we are doing using the super keyword, okay, by invoking the constructors which already exist in the parent class. In addition to that, whatever additional features we have for the child class, that we are explicitly initializing by, you know, extra statements. That is what we are doing. Now we have a third class, which is the demo super. Okay, so here what we will do is we will simply create objects. Okay, we will simply create objects for the box weight class. Okay, because it is the child class, so we will be creating objects for the box weight class, and then we will try to check the volume. We will try to calculate the volume and the weight of the objects. Okay, different objects. So first, as you can see, for box weight, first object created is my box one. And then what am I doing? I am invoking the parameterized constructor. Okay, I'm invoking the parameterized constructor here. So 10, 20, 15, 34.3, these are the four parameters that will be passed. Now, which is the parameterized constructor holding all these four dimensions? For this is for the this constructor, because we are talking about the box weight class. We are invoking the box weight constructor, parameterized constructor. So this is that constructor that will be invoked first. Okay, so for width, what do we have? 10. For double, what do we have? H. For sorry, not for double, for height we have H. For depth we have 15. And for M, that is weight, we have 34.3. Now as soon as you come inside, what do we have? We have a call to the superclass constructor. Okay, so as soon as this will be called, these values will be passed. Okay, so what values will be passed? W, H and D. That means 10, 20 and 15 will be passed. Okay, so this will be passed to whom? To the parent class constructor, parent class parameterized constructor, that is this. Okay, now 10, 20 and 15, it will be passed to this, and here the initialization will take place. So finally 10, 20 and 15 will be initialized to width, height and depth. Okay, and through this our child class object will get initialized. Okay, along with the parent class, the child class object will get initialized. And apart from that, we have also passed the fourth value for M, which was 34.3. So that will be directly assigned to weight. Understood the first statement? There will simply be jumps of the controls, nothing else. So once this first statement is executed, the first parameterized constructor of the child class will be invoked. First parameterized constructor means this. Okay, this parameterized constructor will be invoked. So in this, what do we have? We have a call to the superclass parameterized constructor. So accordingly, these three values 10, 20, 15 will be passed on to the parent class. There the initialization will take place. Okay, the width, height and depth will be initialized through the parent class constructor. And again, the control comes back to the second statement here. Here we are simply assigning the value 34.3, which was passed to M, to weight. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, next again we have the same thing, box weight. So you have to carefully see. You have to understand which constructor, because we have multiple constructors here. So you have to understand which constructor will be invoked depending on the parameters that are being passed. Okay, number of arguments that are being passed. So for the next is for my box 2. This is the second object, and here what are we calling? 2340.076. 2340.076. Okay, so here again the parameterized constructor will be called. Okay, because we have 4 parameters here, the same thing. Okay, again this constructor will be called for this. Then we have, it is the same thing, just like the first, it will function, the box 1 and box 2 will be the same. Okay, the operations will be the same. Then for box 3, what do we have? We are not passing any value. That means it's a default constructor. So when this constructor will be invoked, it is this constructor which will be called. Okay, and what do we have inside it? We first have the super keyword. Okay, we first have a call to the super constructor, sorry, super class constructor. Now one thing that you have to remember is, one thing that you will all have to remember is, whenever you are invoking the super class constructor inside a child class constructor, the that invoking statement, that function calling statement must always be at the beginning. Okay, that must always be at the beginning. Why? Because see, your child class constructor is dependent on the parent class constructor. Okay, your child class constructor is dependent on the parent class constructor. So until the parent class constructor first does all the initialization, the child class constructor cannot do its own initialization. Okay, so the basic construction, basic initialization will be done by the parent class for this particular child class. So that is why the super keyword must always be used at the beginning. Okay, whenever you are using constructors, in terms of constructors I'm saying, okay, so this must always be at the beginning, because in whether you are invoking instance variables or methods, those are, they do not have any dependency. But here you have a dependency because you are constructing objects here, and because you are using inheritance here. So the child class is inheriting all the traits of the parent class. So because it is inheriting the traits, and that is why, whenever you are creating objects and you are invoking the parent class constructor, it is important that first you create it through the parent class. Only then the creation will take place, and after that the rest of the instance variables can be initialized later. Okay, so these statements must always be written at the beginning, that you have to remember. Okay, so as soon as this default constructor will be called, okay, this particular constructor will be invoked, and the first is a call to the superclass default constructor. So there we have all minus ones for the weight, height and depth. Okay, so those will be initialized accordingly, and finally for weight we have -1. Fine. Then for the fourth statement, fourth object, my cube. So this is for the cube, to calculate the volume of the cube. Here what are we passing? We are passing two values, 3 and 2. Okay, so this is for this constructor. So len is 3 and m is 2. So m will be assigned as given. So for len, what will happen is, again you have to pass this parameter, okay, to the parent class constructor. Okay, where we will be initializing the parent class object for my cube here. So when 3 will be passed here, so all width, height and depth will be initialized to 3. Okay, so accordingly the initialization will take place for the cube object, and for weight you have an additional statement at the end. Then, oh sorry, this I was talking about this constructor. Then at the end we have my clone object. So my clone is where you are trying to copy the data of one object to the other object. That is why clone. Okay, clone means duplicate. Okay, so here we are simply copying. We are not transferring the values. We are not we are not simply transferring the values, but we are simply creating a copy of an already existing object. Okay, that is what clone means. So here we are creating a clone of an already existing object. So first what we are doing is, we are passing the object mybox1. Okay, so whatever values we had, because mybox1 is already created and initialized now, we have all the values for mybox1 now. Okay, we have the width as 10, height say for as 20, depth as 15, and we have the weight as 34.3. So because we have all the entire object properly initialized now, what we will do is, we will try to create the same copy of mybox1, and we will name it as my clone. So though we have two separate objects now, okay, so my clone is just a duplicate copy of the mybox1. So therefore I am creating the my clone object. How? By copying the values of mybox1. So that is why I am passing mybox1 as the argument here. Okay, so here I'm passing mybox1 as the argument. So when this will be, when this constructor, when this will be called, so it is this constructor that will be invoked, this one. Okay, this constructor will be invoked. Now because you see, you are passing object, you are here, you are passing an object of which class? Box weight class. You are passing an object of the child class. Okay, So you are passing an object of the child class. Okay. So here what happens is when this statement will be executed, this is a child class object OB. But as I said earlier, that you can pass child class objects to parent class constructors because you are doing inheritance. Okay. It is the parent class which will be initializing the object of the child class. So that is why it is possible. You can pass child class objects as arguments to parent class constructors. Is that fine? So we are passing the object of box weight, okay, OB, to the parent class here. Okay. So whatever values we had for box 1, my box 1, those will be assigned to width, height and depth accordingly. Fine. And here the weight, okay, the weight will be assigned to weight. The box 1's weight will be assigned to weight, and the rest will be done by the superclass constructor. So likewise, we can create the micron object also. Okay, is it clear here till here? এইখিনি বুজি পাইছে চাগে, বুজিব লাগে মানে কোন নাই ইয়াত মই লাহে লাহে বুজাই আছো. Is it clear?
Ma'am, পাইছো.
Okay. Next, more lahe lahe go so that buji pai, huh? That's why I'm going through each and every statement one by one. Here in the next half, we are simply calculating the volume. So we will simply call the volume method through each of these objects created, because now all our objects are instantiated. Yes, all our objects have been created and all our objects have been initialized. So now we will be creating the volumes for each of these objects separately. So that is what we are doing. We are simply making a call to the volume method by using those objects, and accordingly we are displaying the volume and the weight for those objects. So that is what we have done here. ঠিক আছে, সেইখিনিয়ে কৰিছো. So this was just, although the program is quite lengthier, but it is very simple. There's nothing much to it. ঠিক আছে? Okay.
Ma'am,
কোৱা কোৱা
ma'am, মই কালিৰ query